Natural family planning respects a woman's fertility, straight up, and it respects the woman. There's a big difference if you want to take a look at this from respect for women and the degrading of women that has occurred within our culture in the last few decades. Natural family planning looks at a woman's body and it sees her fertility as it is, and it works with that fertility. It doesn't break down the fertility, it doesn't stop it, it doesn't see the fertility as an enemy or something to be avoided. The fertility is something that is beautiful, and natural family planning works with a woman's fertility. When I learned natural family planning with my wife, we learned two versions of natural family planning, and God bless her, my wife Stephanie, we've been married a little over 10 years now, and I wouldn't have been able to research this book without all of the help that she gave me to free me up to be able to do that. But when we were learning natural family planning before we were engaged, I knew about natural family planning, I just didn't know the details, and I was convinced of it, for us to learn it. But coming out of being trained in natural family planning, my appreciation for her as a woman, and women in general, just went through the roof. To understand how me as a guy, my hormones are pretty steady. So day in and day out, I'm feeling pretty consistent. And whereas any lady, her hormones are fluctuating throughout the month naturally. So as our trainers put it, women, when you don't feel the same from day to day, this is why, and I looked at that and said, yeah, I see that. Just all the parts and the details that they went into it just helped me appreciate not only my wife, but women in general more. There's a huge mentality difference between contraception. Contraception is easy, okay? It is, I'm going to take control. I'm going to have an authority over this part of my body and then over my fertility. And natural family planning is also very effective. It's not just throwing it into the wind, but it is respecting our sexuality and our fertility and using it with God's plan in that way, respecting the woman's body.
That nails it. That's really good. I mean, that's a world of difference to say the natural order of a woman, her own person, her integration, her fertility is respected, seen as beautiful, and affirmed in what we're doing. And definitely there's various forms of contraception, but if we're thinking about the pill, I mean, it's in direct contradiction against that. It's really attacking that. It's against that. And that's a huge difference.
Well, and then the beauty is that so many women don't even understand their cycle and the beauty of how God made them. But they'll go on birth control, and then they'll put these toxins inside their bodies and never knowing their whole natural process. And we educate our clients in saying, you can't get pregnant every day of the month. And like, I can't? It's like, no, it's 72 to 100 hours, and you get to explain the whole beauty of it with them. But so many people are ignorant, but yet they'll take chemicals, they'll do a depo shot, they'll do an IUD, they'll do all these other crazy things and not even know the beauty of their own body.
Sure, let's take a phone call from Cassandra.
One of the key components here with the unitive and procreative, or the babies and the bonding, is that they cannot be separated. They must be together in the sexual action. You cannot engage in a sexual action and desiring it, for example, to be procreative, but I don't want to bond with my spouse in this action. That's not what sex is built for. That doesn't image God's love for us. Similarly, with contraceptives, people want to engage in the action, engage in the bonding, perhaps the pleasure and the bonding involved, but don't want the procreative element to come with it. But the procreative element is an integral part of what you're doing in the sexual action. It's like eating. An integral part is receiving the nutrients. To eat and to reject the nutrients is something opposed to the nature of what we're doing.
So the procreative possibility has to be there.
Right. The church uses the words open to life. Some people would think that, well, we could use a contraceptive, but if we got pregnant, we wouldn't have an abortion, perhaps, and they consider that open to life. That's not what the church means when it talks about being open to life. The church means in an objective sense, which means that the very action that you engage in, there's nothing that you do that intentionally thwarts and stops your fertility from working. So your fertility always needs to have the ability to work and be fruitful. You can't stand in the way of that. Now, as far as natural family planning works, there's a distinction. The couple who uses natural family planning, they learn their fertile cycles, they learn about the woman's body, and it's so life-giving and it's so helpful. Knowledge is power, and for women it's just an absolutely beautiful thing to understand their bodies and their fertility and how it works. And they are able to understand when they're fertile and when they're not fertile. So if now is not a good time to have another child, they could refrain from intercourse. Now, there's a difference between that and contraceptives, because they are choosing not to engage in an action that is of its essence, it brings babies. It's a fertile action. Whereas the contracepting couple is shutting down their fertility. They're blocking that fertility. So there's a big difference between the two, even though some people might say, well, a contracepting couple and a natural family planning couple have the same goal.
Right.
But they arrive at that in two different ways.
Father, always wonderful to have you with us. Very powerful show today with Anthony Joseph Digmann and this whole area of, well, not just Catholic, but marriage, sexuality, which should be true for everyone, not just Catholics. But your thoughts about that and anything else?
I think Anthony gave the best explanation about natural family planning that I'd ever heard. Like you said, it really put it together. Just respecting the woman and her body. That's basically
that question comes up again and again from people who are really asking the question. They just don't get the difference between the two because they're so focused on you're postponing children, so you're both doing it, so you're both contracepting. But just what you were saying that he said, that respect for the woman's being and her fertility and the natural
And like
nature.
what also came up is that go green, right? The whole green movement.
Right.
And when you're putting all these pharmaceuticals in your body, there are consequences, you know, they're carcinogenic and all of that. And so there are also these negative consequences that happen. So it's really diminishing to the woman, to who she is. And she's the one that has to, protect herself and so on.
And then to the earth.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
But we are seeing more and more people who are not Christian, Catholic, that are using natural family planning for those very reasons. They're just saying that this is, I feel terrible when I do this. I've studied this. This is not healthy. And this is the best way. Like you're saying, go green. So there's a growing population.
It's effective, but also it's open to God's plan, right? So a child could be conceived. Well, God wants you to have another life in your life.